Before we danced, before we chanted, before we built altars, we listened. In this suspended moment, silence stretches like sacred thread between worlds, not as void, but as vessel. The breath of the earth becomes prayer. The rustle of the trees echoes memory. The hush is not absence, it is attention. We move through abandoned groves where drums once called forth spirits, where incense rose like morning fog, where children were taught to listen before they learned to speak. Here, silence was the first language of the divine. Before the Oriki of the Yoruba, before the griots of the Sahel, before the ancestral names were spoken into the fire, there was the quiet. Not a silence of neglect, but one of reverence. Not a forgetting, but a listening. The forest does not shout, yet it speaks. The ancestors do not force their wisdom, they wait for you to grow still enough to receive it. This is where we begin. In stillness, in breath, in memory. What if the deepest power was never in the ritual but in the space that surrounds it? What if the gods, before they were praised, were heard? We ask not just what they said, but how our ancestors heard it, through wind, through fire, through still water, through bones. We invite you into this quiet, not to escape the world, but to re-enter it with ears that remember. What did our ancestors hear when they sat in silence? What have we forgotten to listen for? In the quiet heart of an Igbo compound at the cusp of dawn, we enter the realm of Ulo Chi, the spirit house within, where stillness is more sacred than sound. A small hut or tranquil corner bathed in gentle morning light becomes the place of communion. A single kola nut sits upon a simple altar, incense curling skyward, smoke drifting like a prayer. Here there is no ritual spectacle, no drumbeat to stir emotion, no chanting to compel spirits to descend. Instead, there is stillness, a deliberate pause. You sit cross-legged, breathing slowly, surrendering the impulse to speak and waiting. It is in this hush that Chi, the personal divine spark entrusted to each soul, begins to speak softly. It is not a demand on the spirit, but an invitation to receive. The camera lingers on dewy leaves, on the gentle waft of smoke, on the profile of a devotee's closed eyes. Words of narration weave over the visuals. In the stillness of Ulo Chi, a person does not ask, they receive. We witness fragments of dreams emerging, visions of ancestors, memories long buried, intuitive glimpses aligning past and present. Every breath in that silence becomes a conduit. Memory surfaces, offering guidance. A long-forgotten answer illumes the mind without effort. Soft, ambient sounds, the whisper of wind through reeds, birdsong just awakening, fill the space without disrupting the reverence. Morning light creeps across the earthen floor, framed by footprints of those who have come before. Each footstep, silent, deliberate, echoes the unspoken lineage. There is intimacy here, the union of the soul with its own divine essence, a communion performed in absence of ceremony. This is not ritual for an audience. It is a sacred encounter between self and spirit. We sit with the devotee as the world wakes beyond the walls. The breath deepens. The kola is offered quietly as thanks. Chi has spoken. No words are needed. The gift has arrived. In Ulo Chi, the listening heart becomes the altar, and within that space the divine flows like silent water, gentle, profound, and transformative. In the warm hush of late afternoon, beneath the sprawling canopy of an ancient fig tree, we enter the realm of Zulu spiritual listening, the domain of uMoya, the spirit wind. Here, all is quiet, no songs, no drums, no spoken chant, only the soft rustle of leaves, the gentle breath of air across skin, and the pulsing stillness between each moment. An elder sits cross-legged on the earth, back straight, eyes closed, palms resting gently on knees. Their form seems to merge with the tree, the land, the sky. Above, branches sway, drawing the spirit wind through their leaves, releasing a symphony of whispers that linger like ancestral presence. In Zulu cosmology, uMoya is not an abstract concept. It is alive, ancestral, immediate. It moves through trees, over mountains, through our own lungs. It carries the voices of ancestors who walk unseen alongside us, guiding, protecting, teaching. Our narrator's voice cuts softly through the wind's hushed hum. You must quiet your mind to hear the ancestors in the breeze. It is not instruction. It is an invitation to open the soul, to become still enough to receive what cannot be demanded or summoned. We linger on visuals, wind weaving ripple patterns across tall grass, the elder's gray hair slowly swaying, eyelashes drifting. The ambient soundscape blends distant, indeterminate ancestral chants, too faint to understand, but heavy with intention and lineage. A quick cut to the elder's closed hands resting on the earth shows fingers curling as though feeling something beyond sight. Another shot closes over their face, a soft inhale, a relaxed exhale, as if the breath itself is a prayer. This practice is not a ceremony, it is a way of being. It teaches that spiritual listening is less about volume and more about vacancy, less about presence and more about patience. It is about learning to trust the silence, to revere the spaces between breaths, to know that the ancestors speak where there is no noise to block their truth. Through this quiet communion, we see that Zulu spirituality recognizes not only the power of sound, but the necessity of stillness. That without the stillness of the spirit wind, the voices of lineage remain unheard, buried beneath the clamor of modernity. Here, in the hush beneath the fig, we remember how to listen. In the deep sandstone cliffs of Mali, where the sky meets stone and silence hangs like incense in the air, the Dogon people preserve one of the most profound initiation rites on the continent. Among these towering escarpments, young boys on the threshold of manhood are led into sacred caves, carved not just by time, but by ancestral purpose. Here they must enter a vow of silence. Their tongues are not merely stilled, they are sanctified by restraint. Words are surrendered so the spirit may speak. In the Dogon worldview, sound is powerful but chaotic, silence is sacred and ordered. To walk into the soul's silence is to prepare oneself for a deeper truth. The silence is not absence, it is presence. It is the whisper of the earth and the hum of ancestral memory. Before these boys become men, before they are given access to the sacred language of the masks and the meanings of the stars, they must become empty vessels. Noise belongs to the outer world, commerce, conflict, chatter, but silence belongs to the inner cosmos. It is the portal through which revelation enters. In this sacred enclosure, sound would be pollution. Only in silence can the soul become tuned to the frequency of the divine. Each initiate must learn not just to be quiet, but to embody quietude. It is a full-bodied stillness, a living breath turned inward. Their instructors, masked and ancient, speak rarely, and only when the silence has done its work. Instructions are not delivered as commands, but as parables left to echo in the quiet. One elder brushes sand with a branch, leaving patterns in the dust. Another offers water in a gourd, but gestures the initiate to observe before drinking. Everything is symbolic. Everything must be perceived with the heart, not the ears. This process isn't just about learning secrets. It's about developing the capacity to carry them. One cannot hold sacred knowledge with a cluttered mind. Night falls slowly over the cliffs. Fires flicker like stars born from stone. The initiates sit cross-legged in the orange glow, their faces calm, their mouths closed, their eyes open not just to what is seen, but to what is unseen. A voiceover speaks. Sound belongs to the world. Silence belongs to the soul. We cut to their silhouettes etched against the ancient rock, the same stone their forebears once leaned against in search of wisdom. Time folds inward, the silence deepens. During these nights, dreams come vividly. The boys awaken not with cries or speech, but with widened eyes. They begin to see beyond the veil of material things. They begin to understand the weight of footsteps, the meaning of still water, the language of shadows. In silence, everything begins to speak. Stone, sky, fire, breath. This is not passive waiting, it is active spiritual listening. The mind quiets, the spirit awakens. Each day the silence is tested by temptation. The urge to speak, to ask, to reach for certainty is strong. But they learn that the path to understanding is carved not by noise, but by surrender. They do not learn by being told. They are transformed by being still. Only in this state can they inherit the sacred cosmology of the Dogon, the sacred geometry, the star lore, the truth of how the world was spun into being. These mysteries are not given cheaply. They are earned through stillness. When the initiation ends and they return to the village, the boys are not the same. They do not speak as they once did. Their language is weighted. Their presence feels grounded, ancient. The silence has changed them. It has rooted them. In every gesture, there is meaning. In every pause, there is reverence. And though they now speak, a part of them always listens. This ritual of sacred silence is not a punishment. It is a profound act of becoming. It is the womb of transformation, where language is reborn, and meaning is unwrapped in layers that only the silent can unfold. This silence is a covenant, a passage, a proving ground. It teaches that not all knowledge is spoken, not all wisdom is loud, and as the Dogon say, the loud do not learn. Only the listening are transformed. Among Bantu cultures, listening is not a passive, polite gesture. It is an active, sacred engagement with the cosmos. In lands where riverbanks, mountain ridges, and sacred groves whisper secrets of ancestors, the act of stillness becomes an invitation. Earth, sky, waters, and departed kin all speak, if only we are willing to attune our senses. Here the silence between sounds, the pause in communal life, is not emptiness. It is the crucible of reunion, harmony, and belonging. Bantu teachings affirm that Ubuntu, I am because we are, can only take root when individuals listen not just to each other, but to the pulse of being itself. In a village shaded by giant fig trees, community gatherings begin not with speeches or drums, but with a moment of silence. It is a collective breath, an acknowledgement that before we act, we must receive. This silence aligns the group with ancestral rhythms, natural order, and the moral architectures that hold society together. When a young woman enters the meeting circle, she does not speak first. She sits, listens, first to the ancestors who guide her footsteps, then to the villagers who speak next. Her words, when they come, are measured, grounded, resonant. The topology of sacred listening runs through rivers as well. A fisherman casts his net by dawn, and first he closes his eyes to hear the river's flow, the singing of fish below, the groan of submerged roots. The river is more than water. It is an ancestor, an interlocutor, a teacher. To hear its song is to know when to fish, when to rest, when to sow. His life is woven into the river's rhythm. Silence is not absence. It is the presence of depth. It is in the pause before laughter, the quiet before decision, the breath that binds moments together. It is why the Bantu elders teach that wisdom is not in what you say, but in what you are willing to hear. It is why ceremonies begin with quiet, why divinations unfold in whispered tones, why hearts are trained to listen. When decisions are made about land, marriage, or justice, the council does not begin with arguments. It begins with silence. It is that stillness that opens the door to ancestral counsel, invites harmony, and invites the community into alignment. Out of that silence, voices rise, not to shout, but to speak in harmony. In modern times, we too often mistake noise for meaning. Pages of text cannot convey the resonance of a single pause. Conferences filled with words lack the depth of one well-held silence. Yet in Bantu thought, depth is found in the stillness, in the listening, in the space carved by attention. That space is where humanity and divinity meet, where the individual and the collective converge, where balance is restored. To listen, in the Bantu way, is to participate in the cosmic dance of reciprocity. It is to remember that speech is response, not just expression. It is to stand as witness before the world, the ancestors, and each other. It is to honor the way the universe speaks, not always in thunder, but often in stillness. Here the sacred act of balance is not given, it is cultivated. By listening like this, by nurturing silence as practice, one becomes attuned not only to others, but to the ineffable pulse that sustains all life. In Bantu cosmology, silence speaks, and within it we find ourselves again. Under the wide canopy of a centuries-old baobab, an elder grandmother sits cross-legged on sun-warmed earth. Her hands rest gently on the land that holds countless generations, knees touching soil, gaze lowered beyond sight. Around her, the air is still, heavy with quiet remembrance. In this moment, prayer is more than words. It is a living alignment of heart, body, and earth. She breathes slowly, deeply, her spine straight but relaxed, letting the rhythm of her own heartbeat merge with the pulse of creation beneath her. This is the embodied prayer our ancestors understood, not spoken up, but rooted down. An old saying echoes over the scene, don't just pray with your mouth, pray with your bones. Here silence becomes the substance of communion. As the ambient soundtrack swells, soft wind through leaves, distant bird call, the low hum of ancestral presence, we feel something shift. The grandmother's eyes remain closed, but her bones seem to speak. Often unnoticed, they bear memory of births and deaths and lives woven together across centuries. In their stillness, they speak of resilience and lineage. The camera lingers on her hands, fingertips grazing the earth. It moves down her arms, across her ribcage, until finally her feet, toes curled into the ground, as though drawing wisdom and strength upward. The silence is thick yet vibrant, alive. On her back, faint outlines of tattoos or scarifications testify to rites of passage etched into flesh. The scars themselves are prayer, ancient patterns reminding us that flesh remembers. In this ritual of alignment, prayer is not upward petition, but inward resonance. The bones are a bridge between the seen and unseen, part of a sacred network that includes her breath, the earth beneath, and the spirit forces that flow among both. Under the baobab's roots, the earth hums. The grandmother inhales, and the rooted prayer permeates every cell. She exhales, and the release becomes a wave that moves through body, tree, soil, sky. Each bone, each nerve, each heartbeat is a note in a silent symphony. Her body is no longer separate. She is earth, spirit, ancestor, all in woven alignment. True prayer flows from bone, breath, being. Grandmother remains in still communion, listening as much as becoming. In this communion, there is no urgency. No words scramble for attention. Instead, prayer is a deep dwell, being fully present in the body and ground at once. It is here that bones carry the actual voices of ancestors, less heard than remembered, less spoken than already known. In this act, we glimpse the immeasurable depth of spiritual listening, prayer that is rooted, embodied, ancestral. As the scene fades, we carry her posture in our memory, spine upright in softness, eyes closed in stillness, hands on earth in surrender and celebration. Prayer with your bones is not a metaphor. It is a calling to ground our hearts and voices in the memory of those who came before. It is a reminder that our own bones cradle the same lineage, the same stories, the same spirit. In this communion, we remember that to pray is to return home, in body, in spirit, in bone. In the jagged rhythm of modern life, our cities pulse with the clamor of 1,000 notifications. Horns blare, voices shout, screens flash, hypnotic streams of information. We flit from email to Instagram to news alerts in a frenzy of connection, yet seldom pause to simply breathe. Fast-cut montages of thrumming transit hubs, neon-lit sidewalks, and the ceaseless ping of alerts are undercut by a single, profound question. When was the last time you chose silence not to escape, but to receive? Most of us perceive silence as absence, or worse, as emptiness. But to the wisdom of Africa's spiritual heart, silence is not a void. It is a womb. It is the soil in which healing begins, the space in which clarity takes root, the stillness in which the soul finds itself again. The psychic toll of constant noise is not abstract. Our minds fracture under the weight of ceaseless stimuli, attention splinters into 1,000 pieces, and we begin to drift from ourselves and from our communities. We lose the threads of ancestral memory, of embodied ritual, of communal rhythm. The frantic world offers connection, but it steals depth. How many of us can feel the pulse of our own heartbeat? How many can sense the breath that anchors us to earth? In contrast, silence heals. It is not therapy, it is homecoming. It is the restoration of the self-worn soul. African spirituality has always taught that vibration matters more than volume. It values the resonance in the spaces between beats, the hum beneath the chant, the echo that lingers after the drum's final stroke. Listen too loudly and you drown the subtle frequencies. Listen with intention, and the world, including your own spirit, begins to speak. In the hush, ancestral voices emerge, not as ghosts, but as guides. The silent corners of our being are not empty. They are filled with the memory of what once was whole and still can be again. We invite the viewer to an inward journey. Close your eyes, breathe deeply as though drinking air. Sense the pause between inhales. Hear the world, not as clutter, but as vibration. Feel your bones attuned to the stillness. Ask your heart, when did you last sit in sacred silence? When did you sit not to retreat, but to receive? Here lies the invitation to receive rather than escape. To listen to the breath beneath the breath, the heartbeat beneath the heartbeat, the ancestral rhythm underneath the rush. Silence in this context is a radical act. It is resistance against the tyranny of screens, the colonization of attention, the outsourcing of memory. It is a reclaiming of our own inner ground. It is the conscious choice to let stillness root us, rather than letting sound scatter us. It is how we remember we belong. To ourselves, to our communities, to our ancestors. When the noise recedes, we find an unexpected clarity, an inner quietude that is not fragile but fierce. It is the old medicine of Africa, a medicine of silence, of attunement, of deep listening that heals, not by fixing, but by awakening what was always there. The screen stills. The city noise retreats. We hold our breath. And in that suspended moment, we remember. The soul does not need to be loud to be heard, to live, to matter. In fact, often the opposite is true. Silence heals wounds not by ignoring them, but by giving them space to breathe, to speak, to resolve. We feel the roots grow deeper beneath our feet, feel the ancestral arms wrap around us as we choose to sit with our own quiet. Modern life may pull us into noise, but the invitation to return remains. To root into stillness is not withdrawal, it is aliveness. It is the sacred vibration of presence. African spirituality reminds us that healing does not come from more attention, but from intentional listening. So let the silence begin, not as the absence of noise, but as the presence of depth. Listen, breathe, receive. Let the silence heal you. We are invited now into a movement of reclamation, a return to sacred stillness that can happen anywhere, anytime. Imagine creating a quiet corner in your home, a soft mat beside a window, a small altar with stone or shell, a candle or simple offering. Imagine stepping outside, standing beneath the branches of a tree that has seen generations, breathing gently, closing your eyes, and allowing yourself to become still. You remember Ulo Chi in that moment, honoring the space within your heart where the divine whispers. You remember uMoya, the spirit wind that carries ancestral breath not just through forests, but through your lungs. You may recall the disciplined silence of the Dogon initiates, not as ritual to mimic, but as the quiet foundation from which inner wisdom emerges. In these small acts of intention, daily rituals at dawn, ancestral pilgrimages to hills or rivers, moments of meditation in urban parks, you begin to restore not only silence but relationship, with earth, with lineage, with yourself. As you sit beneath the tree, you breathe in deeper, and an inner calm returns, reminding you that stillness is the common ground between you and those who came before. You learn to trust pauses as guides, to treat silence not as emptiness, but as depth, as opportunity. Every time you go silent with intention, the ancestors lean closer. That phrase becomes real when you feel the warmth against your skin, the breeze shifting direction, the sudden presence of clarity or comfort. You may feel gratitude rising, or a name remembered long ago. You may simply feel seen, by yourself, by spirit, by history. Though there are no set pathways, no prescribed prayers, the invitation is clear. Show up in quiet, and something ancestral will answer. Scenes unfold softly through our narration. A mother sitting on her stoop before sunrise, breathing slowly with a leaf in her hands. A young man closing his laptop and stepping into a grove where he pauses, hands resting on bark. A traveler walking to the Dogon cliffs, stopping halfway to whisper thanks for the silence that awaits. These acts are simple but profound. They remind us that spiritual silence lives not only in ceremony but in everyday moments of attentive being. In reclaiming sacred stillness, we reshape our relationship with the world, allowing spirit to guide rather than impulse, memory to root us rather than habit to scatter us. We complete the circle of our spiritual inheritance, weaving ancient practices into modern lives. And as we do, we begin to speak again, not with noise, but with resonance. Not with consumption, but with communion. So the return begins here, beneath a tree, in a quiet corner of home, in a pause before speech. And with each intentional silence, we reclaim not only sacred stillness, but ourselves. The sun dips low as we close this sacred journey into the depths of silence, where the spirits speak not with the roar of thunder, but with intimate whispers carried on the wind, nestled in memory, and felt deep within our bones. These are not the grand proclamations of spectacle, but the subtle tremors of ancestral presence that ripple through our stillness. In quiet reflection, we sense that Africa's greatest power has never resided solely in drums or chants, but in the hushed devotion of attentive ears and open hearts. As we have learned, the spirits don't always speak in thunder, the voice reminds us. They often come in whispers, in wind, in memory, in bone. This is not a loss of volume, but a shift into resonance, an awakening to the presence that resides in the spaces between sound. And so we affirm, Africa's power was never just in its drums, it was in its quiet. In the final words, we linger together in the sanctity of the pause. In the silence, we do not speak to God, we hear God speaking through us. It's an invitation, not to retreat, but to receive. As the screen fades to black, a gentle command appears, return to silence. You will remember. And now, we thank you. Thank you for choosing stillness over distraction, depth over noise, presence over performance. Your willingness to listen is a sacred act. If this journey stirred something within you, if you sensed the stirrings of your own ancestors, or felt the spirit wind passing through, leave a comment below sharing your ancestral practice or experience with silence. If you feel drawn to return here, to remember through stillness, subscribe and join this growing circle of those who honor quiet as spiritual power. Until we meet again in silence, may your next breath carry you home.